So as David's just explained to us, things are changing for the rabbits. We've got new varieties of RHDV coming through, which makes monitoring now more important than ever before if we would like to answer questions like, is RHDV rolling around my area right now? Which strains are actually coming through? Are they mutating? But unfortunately, monitoring for these viruses in the traditional way, searching for rabbit carcasses, is really laborious. We just don't have that manpower, especially in some of the pastoral zones. We just don't have that many people and that much time. So our goals with this study that I'm going to tell you about was to validate fly traps as an alternative management tool, monitoring tool for the virus, and figure out how many strains are circulating regionally and are they all causing outbreaks. This is our wonderful fly trap design. It's basically two cookie jars wedged together. And on the left there, you've got the fantastic baked concoction of rotting, minced up liver, some cow dung, and some sodium sulfide, which is like fart gas to top it off. So the flies, they're attracted by this delightful smell. They crawl in through the funnel, and because they're kind of stupid, they get lost in there, they can't find their way back out, and the bottom of the canister just fills up with fly corpses. So we collect these weekly. And the great news is these fly traps were really, really effective. We got hundreds to thousands of flies per trap, and the species that we were catching were the very same species that have been previously shown to carry RHDV around the country. So fantastic, we're getting our flies and they're the right ones. To compare the fly traps to the original carcass searches, well, in terms of time effectiveness, they're really doing well. 5 to 10 minutes per site just to refresh the bait and change over the canister is all you need. And the great thing is that they work even when the rabbit density is really low. What we find with carcass searches is that after you've spent hours and hours putting your head down rabbit warrens looking for nasty smells, half the time you don't find any anyway, because even if rabbits are dying, what they do is they die too far down the warren and you can't find them, or those that die on the surface get taken up by foxes and scavenged, so you don't always find them, even if rabbits are in fact dying. And you need a lot less expertise to run a fly trap, and a lot less of a keen sight and smell. The one downside with fly traps is that, well, there are no rabbit carcasses that you're searching for, so you don't know whether the rabbits are actually getting killed by the virus that's present, and you don't get that demographic information that we can get from rabbit carcasses about what size of rabbits are getting killed. So there's a bit less information, but very much easier to do. So we've got our big canister full of flies. Next step is to mash them up in some buffer, and then we use some very standard commercial kits in the lab to extract the viral RNA out of that, reverse transcribe it, and then do a PCR. PCR is a very standard lab procedure, very easy to do, and what that tells us is your target present or absent in your sample? In this case, our target is RHDV, and we can detect is it or is it not in our flies. So on the right there, I've got an example of our results from 2014. There are two take-home messages from this chart that I want you to get. So we've got the dots represent the times where we were able to detect the virus within our fly samples. The crosses on top of the dots are the times where we also found rabbit carcasses. So our two take-homes. First one is that we were able to find virus in the flies both before and after we actually found the carcasses. So you get much more sensitivity of when you're actually picking up the virus. The second thing is that the site 2 and 3, the red and the blue sites there, we never ever found a rabbit carcass. For all we know, the virus was never there, but with the flies, we're actually picking it up just the same as the other sites, even though there weren't many rabbits around. So we know that there's virus there. The next step that we did was to sequence the virus samples, and that tells us exactly which variants of the virus were around. We did this before RHDV2 came in. So what we were looking at was not big separate strains like RHDV2, but variants within our original strain that was floating around. And when we know the exact variants that are there, we can use that to trace the outbreak origins or monitor how the virus is actually evolving. We found 6 different variants within our samples. Interestingly, only 2 of them were infecting rabbit carcasses. So that tells us that not every strain that's out there is actually being effective at creating outbreaks among the rabbits. There's clearly a bit of competition between the strains, which might be helping to drive the evolution of that virus. So you might be wondering, is RHDV actually in your area? The great news is that we can help you to find out. We have funding for a limited time only to provide you with fly traps, and we can even help test your flies. But wait, there's more. If you've found rabbits on your property which are mysteriously dead and you think the culprit might be RHDV, we can also organise to get those tested for you. So if you contact John Kovliski, who spoke earlier, he can get you set up to get involved. We've got the funding, we've got the resources, there's no reason not to.